has spent £3 million to raise U-boat 534, believing that it could contain valuable paintings, jewels or even gold. The U-boat slipped out of its base at Kiel just hours before the end of the Second World War. It was sunk in the Kattegat Sea between Denmark and Sweden.
Raising this 250-foot submarine has taken 3 weeks. However, still it might have looked underwater. The seas were frequently too choppy to allow the network of steel cables attached to U-boat 534 to be pulled by the 2 cranes floating above it. When they were, these anti-aircraft guns on the conning tower broke the surface first. Churchill said the only thing that really frightened him was the U-boat peril, but in the final days of the war, with Hitler dead, 223, virtually the whole fleet, were scuttled. U-boat 534 slipped away from Germany. No one seems to know where it was heading or with what on board. But the Danish publisher funding the salvage operation has been giving his excitement free rein.
Could be all from building gold in the keel of the boat or whatever. There's no limits actually what you could think and believe and hope.
Just before the final lift, various specialists were getting ready to retrieve the contents. Some already very excited to see the hull in what they call fantastic shape. There is even paint left on it. This former crew member is now waiting to go out to the site. He remembers the large explosion which sank his vessel. He ran through the engine room, he says, up to the conning tower, and then jumped off the front of the U-boat into the sea. At 10:45 local time, the tip of an anti-aircraft gun broke the surface of the water. The length of the deck was visible just 15 minutes later. 2 delays now present themselves. First, salvage workers must pump water out of the submarine before lifting it clear of the sea. Second, there are thought to be 6.5 tons of explosives inside, so the first person to climb through the hatches will be looking for them rather than secret documents or gold. Jeremy Vine, BBC News, on the Danish island of Anholt.
Fisher was off mud caked 18 inches high in places. The hull had been stuck in clay on the seabed. Yet experts reckon the way the submarine is hanging from their cranes means 2 of the 5 separate sections inside are full of air. Quite how the other parts should be cleared of water has been exercising the salvage firm Smittak, whose executives arrived on the nearest island today in buoyant mood, having assured their client that nothing of value would be pumped out with the seawater. Churchill said the only thing that really frightened him was the U-boat peril. But in the final days of the war, with Hitler dead, 223, virtually the whole fleet, were scuttled. Fascination with the sunken submarine, which was discovered 7 years ago, was stirred by a mystery. Where was it going on the day of the German surrender, and what was it carrying on board? Some German crew members have come here to see their vessel rescued 48 years after they were. None seemed sure of the purpose of their last mission.
Good. Good.
Because all 52 crew members escaped the submarine as it went down, though 3 died later, the Danish publisher paying for the search has not had German objections to contend with. The submarine is not classified a war grave. But getting the submarine to the surface of the sea is really just the start. The breathtaking views of its deck and conning tower may have exhilarated those funding the salvage operation, but what's inside U-boat 534 could be even more thrilling. Gold, Nazi documents, other clues indicating what the vessel's final mission was. That's what they're looking for now. Jeremy Vine, BBC News, over the Kattegat Sea.
By the ANC says that prisoners were tortured and killed, and it calls for those responsible to be disciplined and for compensation to be paid to the victims.
The ANC in exile at the height of its war against Pretoria's apartheid regime in the 70s and 80s established training camps for its military wing, here in Uganda, but mostly in Angola, Zambia, Tanzania and Zimbabwe. Conditions were appalling, a lack of clean water, food and medicine. To make matters worse, the South African regime managed to infiltrate the ranks of ANC combatants. The result, once that became clear, was a climate of suspicion that led to the brutal treatment of suspects.
Among these violations were detention without trial, beatings, solitary confinement, humiliation, cruel and inhuman treatment, and death.
Amongst those implicated in tonight's report are at least half a dozen current members of the ANC's intelligence and security departments based in Johannesburg. One of them, here in the red tie, is Basil Jomo Mavusu, today one of Nelson Mandela's bodyguards. He was the first commander of the notorious Quatro camp in Angola. Senior members of the ANC are named. Jacob Zuma, Deputy Secretary General, at the time Chief of Intelligence in Zambia. He's accused of failing to prevent the prolonged imprisonment of one ANC activist. Then Joe Modise, current Chief of Staff of Umkhonto we Sizwe, the ANC's armed wing. He's accused of making arrests without cause. Also named the late Chris Hani, leader of South Africa's Communist Party when he was assassinated in April. He sent suspected dissidents to the Quatro camp in Angola, knowing what that would mean. The ANC leadership must now decide how to punish the guilty. John Harrison, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Thank you very much.
Are at risk because of pollution and water sports.
Flamborough Head on Humberside, the most northerly outcrop of coastal chalk in Britain, is exceptionally rich in cliff-nesting seabirds, gulls, cormorants and other species. Together with the surface and underwater wildlife, from seals to simple seabed organisms, they form a chain of life which is increasingly vulnerable to human activities around the country's coastline. And this area is among 27 listed by English Nature as especially sensitive to environmental damage. That potential damage is seen as coming mainly from the marine leisure industry.
What we're looking to is to find ways of cooperating with them, and one way we see is in some areas identifying those special wildlife areas in which other activities might cause damage.